Natalie felt very uncomfortable when visiting the foster family. When talking to her fiancé's parents, she answered evasively, trying not to linger on anything specific. As a medical student, Natalie lived modestly and never saw such luxury. Frankly, Barbara and Tyler were unhappy about the fact that their son intended to marry a young woman from a poor family. They knew that Natalie's father had disappeared in the most mysterious way, and Barbara suspected that Natalie wasn't telling them the whole truth. Surely her father must have gotten into trouble and ran away, leaving behind a mountain of debt and unfinished business, Barbara thought. Under the attentive gaze of her fiancé's father, Natalie felt like an insect caught under the lens of an entomologist's microscope. She knew that despite all of her efforts, she did not succeed at making a good first impression. What's more is that Barbara Foster made some offensive statements while talking to Natalie, which hurt her feelings deeply. Natalie was uncomfortable talking about her father, who disappeared 3 years ago. No one knew what happened to him and whether anyone was involved in his disappearance. Natalie was sure of only one thing. Her father could not have intentionally treated his family so cruelly. Jonathan Young was a decent and honest man who would never betray his loved ones and abandon them in difficult times. For some inexplicable reason, it was the disappearance of Natalie's father that most intrigued Barbara and Tyler Foster. They liked to watch as their guests tried to find a logical explanation for everything. If Natalie had known that such a reception awaited her, she would have never entered that home. Fortunately, Ethan was the complete opposite of his parents. He was the only reason she agreed to do that dinner in the first place. In order to embarrass her future daughter-in-law as much as possible, Barbara served many exotic dishes that she ordered from the restaurant. She knew that the young woman, who grew up in a poor family, had never seen such dishes, and therefore, quite expectedly, would not know how to eat them. Barbara herself did not know how to cook and got takeout or delivery for every meal. What she cared most about at that moment was humiliating the young woman and ideally even getting her and her son to break up. Tyler, in turn, had already found Ethan a match from a wealthy family who could strengthen his position in business. Money goes with money, Tyler likes to say, as he counted every cent. No one knew the reason behind Tyler's sudden success in business, which occurred no more than 3 years ago. Prior to that, Tyler was the co-founder of a rather unsuccessful company that did not seem to have a bright future. Tyler explained his financial rise by saying that he got lucky when he was able to close a number of successful deals. But those who knew the businessman personally doubted that he was able to succeed alone without outside help. There were rumors about an inheritance received from a rich aunt in California and a big loan that was taken out with huge interest rates. It was very difficult to confirm or refute these theories, and Tyler himself preferred not to pay too much attention to the rumors. Natalie didn't know about any of this and in general tried not to focus on money. She dreamed of becoming a pediatrician because she loved children so very much. Her and Ethan met by chance. As soon as they saw each other, they immediately felt a strong attraction. Unlike his parents, Ethan was a smart and polite young man with whom you could talk about everything in the world and have a very good time. Natalie's mother liked Ethan, whom she believed to be a wonderful young man. Despite all that, Natalie found herself having to endure the mocking of Ethan's parents. At one point, Barbara's remarks became so painful that the young woman got up from the table and resolutely headed towards the exit. Natalie was offended when Barbara tried to embarrass her by drawing attention to the fact that she wasn't familiar with exotic cuisine. Barbara smiled contently, knowing that she was able to get under Natalie's skin. "Where are you going, Natalie? We haven't even had dessert yet," the woman exclaimed. "No thank you, Mrs. Foster. I'm full," Natalie answered while doing her best to keep calm. She tried desperately not to cry, but felt a giant lump in her throat. Ethan rose from the table and tried to comfort Natalie, but the young woman did not want to stay in that house for even a minute longer. Natalie made her decision and had no desire to continue spending time with Barbara and Tyler, who taunted her and behaved as if she were beneath them. After seeing Natalie off, Ethan returned to his parents and asked, "Why did you do that? Couldn't you have been a little kinder?" "Son, this poor girl is no good for you. You should forget about her. I already found you a good match, with whom our fortune will grow," Tyler said nonchalantly. Ethan, however, found his offer totally unacceptable. He loved Natalie so much and believed that everything would work out between them. Growing up, Ethan's father was relatively poor, and therefore he was not used to abundance and did not need luxury. He still remembered those times when, returning from work, his father lowered his eyes, unable to face his wife. Back then, they didn't have much money in the bank or food in the fridge. Ethan didn't know exactly what happened 3 years ago. All he knew was that his father was somehow able to get rich. On the one hand, Ethan was happy about his dad's newfound fortune. On the other hand, he saw how much money had changed him. He became a harsh and domineering person who tried to subordinate others. Natalie was crying openly on her way home. It was a warm evening. The few passers-by did their best not to look at the crying young woman, who was clearly very upset. Natalie refused Ethan's offer to walk her home. The young woman wanted to be alone and have a good cry before returning home. Natalie never cried in front of her mother, who already had to endure a lot of trials in her life. "I bet she won't be coming back," Barbara said to her husband. "I think so too. The trick with the restaurant food worked flawlessly. Frankly, I couldn't have thought of it myself," Tyler said with a smile. Only Ethan was sincerely upset about everything that had happened. Of course, he loved his parents, but he could not forgive them for treating his fiancée in this way. He slammed the door and ran out into the night. "Don't worry about it. He'll get over it and forget the impoverished girl," Tyler reassured his wife. At that moment, Tyler felt like he was in control of everything and everyone. He had no idea that his life was going to change drastically in the very near future. It all started when a homeless man named Bob found an old newspaper in the garbage. It seemed that there was nothing special about this fact, and that it was in no way related to the events described above. The homeless man intended to use the newspaper to kindle a fire. He unfolded it and was about to place it into a pile of firewood when he saw something that made his heart beat fast and tears appear in the corners of his eyes. Bob reacted in this way because he saw his own photograph on one of the pages. Bob looked much better in the picture than he did in reality and definitely wasn't homeless when this picture was taken. A note was published next to the photo stating that the businessman named Jonathan Young went missing along with a large sum of money. At first, Bob thought that it was all just a big coincidence. But when he read the note again, he felt uneasy. The first thing that brought him back to himself was a headache that originated somewhere in the depths of his consciousness and began to pound in the back of his head. Bob clutched his head as he bent over from the excruciating pain. Images and visions from the man's life began to swirl in a horrifying whirlpool. After a few minutes, Bob remembered everything. First of all, he remembered that his name wasn't Bob. 3 years ago, he was on his way to a meeting with a large sum of money to close a business deal. Unfortunately, his bodyguard was sick that day, so Jonathan headed to the meeting alone. When he was only a mile away, he saw his business partner parked on the side of the road. "Tyler, are you having car problems? Is there anything I could do to help?" Jonathan asked, slowing down. "Yes, it seems that there might be an issue with my carburetor, but I'm not so good with cars," Tyler answered. Jonathan got out of the car and walked closer. He had no idea that another person was watching him. Jonathan leaned over the engine to try and find the cause of the breakdown. At that moment, Tyler hit him hard over the head with a tire iron. Jonathan collapsed. "See, it's all over now. I told you that tricking this simple man would be easy," Tyler's wife said as she came out from behind the bushes. "Yes, Barbara, you're definitely smart. Okay, let's take the money and the car and bring the body to the city dump," Tyler said in a businesslike manner. He was certain that Jonathan Young had died on the spot. However, Tyler turned out to be as bad at killing as he was at business. Jonathan, on the other hand, was fortunate. On the day of the attack, he was discovered by an elderly homeless man who in the past worked at a nursing auxiliary. It was he who gave first aid to the businessman and treated the wound on his head. The only thing that depressed Jonathan was that he couldn't remember anything. But since he found himself among homeless men, he came to the logical conclusion that he too was homeless. He did not remember his real name, so the other homeless people started calling him Bob. So, Bob it will be, the man thought. Secretly, he did hope that his memory would return one day so that he could dispel all of his doubts. Time passed, but Bob still knew nothing about himself. He moved to a town that was several miles away from the city. He thought it would be easier to find food there, and there would be fewer problems with the police. This went on until he came across the 3-year-old newspaper in which his wife Bridget published a note about his disappearance. When memory returned to Jonathan, the first thing he did was call the police. He gave him his name and testified against his ex-partner. Of course, at that moment, Jonathan didn't know that Tyler didn't act alone. When his former business partner appeared on the doorstep, Tyler felt uneasy. Only then did he realize that Natalie was the daughter of the man whom he'd robbed 3 years prior. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, Jonathan did not come alone, but with a police squad. In the blink of an eye, the police cornered off the house and arrested its owners. When Tyler saw Jonathan, he felt like a ghost was standing in front of him. It took a lot of work to convince Tyler that he failed and did not actually kill him back then. Ethan was devastated after learning about the crime that his parents committed. He had previously suspected that there was a sinister reason behind his family's sudden fortune, but he continued to hope that perhaps his father really did close a favorable deal. To Jonathan's credit, he held absolutely no ill will towards Ethan and did not accuse his daughter's fiancé of being involved in the crimes of his parents. Moreover, Jonathan supported Ethan and Natalie's relationship. 6 months later, the couple got married in front of their friends and family. Only Ethan's parents were missing because they were about to start their prison sentences. Being a fair man, Jonathan had nothing against his son-in-law and even helped him find a job. He never regretted taking a chance on the young man. Unlike his father, Ethan turned out to be an honest and hardworking employee, which pleased Jonathan greatly. The court sentenced Michael and Barbara to 4 years in prison, which served as an opportunity for them to rethink their lives and appreciate the small things that they paid no attention to before.